Thank you so much, Joyful Noise. I'm not watching much TV at all these days anymore, and don't see much news because of that on TV. I tend to read it more, and most of the time these days I read it on my phone. And I was flipping through Google News the other day, and so I'm just seeing these headlines. And if something kind of catches your attention, then you click on it to read what the news story was. And this was the headline that caught my attention: Costco pulling products allegedly made with forced monkey labor. Costco pulling products allegedly made with forced monkey labor. Did you know that was a thing? I had no idea. Never even heard the words forced monkey labor, but I decided that's a story I think I want to click on. And so as I'm reading this, it goes on to describe what is going on in some area of Thailand where they have been able to train monkeys to climb trees to shake coconuts out of them. I'm thinking these people deserve a Nobel Prize. I think that is ingenious, because otherwise you've got to climb it. Instead, in some cases, it was taking like 4 years to train a monkey to go up to somehow shake a coconut loose to get it down. Anyway, somehow that practice that was going on got out. PETA got hold of it, and then I guess put the pressure on Costco, because apparently these monkeys had been confined as well. So they're allowed to go out to work, but then they don't get to, I guess, free range. Anyway, so I had seen that story and I had read it, and I'm thinking, man, who would have thought? Man, let's train a monkey to do this. That's brilliant. I'm trying to teach monkeys at my house to vacuum. And so anyway, I was talking to somebody later that day about it, or actually the next day, and they said, I saw that story as well, and I was laughing about it, and they said, I guess the problem is this, that it was a problem because they would confine these monkeys, that they would be chained up. And so I get that's the bad thing. That's the bad thing. And so I said in response, here's my thought though: if you have spent 4 years training a monkey to climb a tree to shake a coconut out, do you want to let it go? But let's just think historically in the United States and even around the world, where people don't have tractors and combines and massive farm and agricultural equipment. What are you going to do if you need to plow the ground? You're going to get a mule, you're going to get an ox, you're going to get a horse, you're going to get something that you're going to put a bit and bridle in their mouth, you're going to put a yoke in it, you are going to confine it, and then what are you going to do? You're going to work with that animal, right? Are you going to, you don't want to mistreat it because you need that animal to help get this work done. We've been doing this throughout the entire course of human history. And if I've trained a monkey 4 years to climb a tree, I'm not going to let him just out of the cage when he's on vacation. And so when I said that, though, they said, that actually kind of makes sense. I kind of get the fact why you would confine them, because you don't want to lose them. And behind all of this is this thought, that the headline, that the caption, that the bit of detail that you get at this level seems to convey a message that if you think about it with broader context, you come away with a different conclusion. That if you just get the snippet, if you just get the headline, if you get just the caption, then you may wind up experiencing or landing in a conclusion that context might lead you to a different place. That's something that happens all the time in our society, in our culture. You see it in print media, like if you see a headline, the headline may say something that if you read the story, it seems like it's a different thought. It may be that there is on TV news. You'll see some caption, you'll see some headline, you think it's going to be talking about this, or even sometimes with products that we buy, we'll see some snippet that it looks like it's going to be this, but if you had more information, you'd realize that's not actually how it works. That's not actually what is going on. What I need is context, and if I had context, I would arrive at a different conclusion. Now, what's true in these other aspects of our lives is also true regrettably oftentimes in our spiritual life as well. By that I mean this: there are a stack of verses in the Bible that are pretty well known, that oftentimes are very memorable in some of these, and there's nothing wrong with these verses. These are good verses. They contain, and they are actual truth. This is what God has said to us. But the problem is, what has regularly occurred is that these verses get shared in such a way that they become almost and effectively cliche. And they get to the point where they are so well known and they are so widely quoted that they get used in ways that actually is at odds with what the meaning actually is. And so starting today, we're starting a new series that I'm calling Coffee Mug Christianity. And what we're going to do over the next 4 weeks is to look at some really popular verses of the Bible, verses that almost certainly that you are familiar with. And what you're going to see is that as we give consideration to the context, what we have thought oftentimes these verses mean or how we have used them is actually at odds with what God actually has said. So here's the first one I want you to think about with me today, and it comes to us from Philippians 4:13, and it says this: I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, many know that verse. You may very well be familiar with it. You may even sign letters with your name and underneath it put Philippians 4:13. And you have used this verse, and others have used this verse to essentially say, ain't no mountain high enough. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, regardless of whatever the challenge is, regardless of the obstacle. Because I'm on God's team, I've got the strength, I've got the ability through Christ to do absolutely any and everything. Is that what this verse says? Let me answer that with one word. No, that is not what this verse says. That's not what might have been used by virtue of what shows up on a coffee mug to communicate. So if that's not exactly what it means, what does it mean? If I can't do, and this verse doesn't mean that I can do absolutely anything as a follower of Jesus, what exactly does it mean? Look with me in your Bibles, Philippians chapter 4, starting with verse 10. There we read this: I rejoiced in the Lord greatly, because once again you renewed your care for me. You were in fact concerned about me, but lacked the opportunity to show it. I don't say this out of need, for I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I find myself. I know both how to make do with little, and I know how to make do with a lot. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being content, whether well-fed or hungry, whether in abundance or in need. I am able to do all things through him who strengthens me. Verse 13 is not a statement that occurs in isolation. It occurs in context. And if it doesn't mean that I can do just absolutely anything, what exactly is God saying to me? What's he saying to you? Based on what we read in context, I would say this: you need to understand, I need to understand that walking with Jesus doesn't give you a pass for physical or material struggle. Walking with Jesus doesn't give you a pass for material or physical struggle. What's going on in this passage? Well, it's a letter that Paul has written to a group of believers in the city of Philippi. These were people that he came to know as God used him to plant a church in that city on his second missionary journey. At this point, Paul is not just freely traveling. Paul is now under arrest, it is believed, in Rome at this point, under house arrest. And so that means that he has Roman soldiers that are assigned to guard him so that he can't go out and do as he pleases. He is confined to this particular home, but while he does have some freedom in the home, he's not like sitting in a dungeon. There are some real limitations that he is having to operate under. For one thing, the government provided a daily stipend with respect to food, but it was very nominal. And so if you wanted to have anything more to get by, well, then that was going to be on your dime. If there are any other physical needs that you have in terms of clothing, or if you need to buy some firewood, or you need anything, that's going to be on you. That's your financial responsibility. But you can't go out and work. Now, Paul is physically capable of doing that, but he's confined. He's under house arrest. And so he's got limited resources, and as he is experiencing these limited resources, the needs begin to ratchet up. And so Paul says in verse 10, he says, I rejoice greatly because you once again renewed your care for me. Now, what does that communicate? It's suggesting that the believers in Philippi had sent some money to Paul to help make sure that his needs were taken care of. And he says, you were in fact concerned about me, but lacked the opportunity to show it. And that's an appeal to the fact that where they were from where he was a distance of some 800 miles. It's not like you could put a check in an envelope and mail it and it was going to get there. You'd have to wait until there was somebody going from Philippi to the city of Rome that would be able to actually courier these resources to Paul. So they'd been waiting for some time to be able to help. And Paul is writing and he is expressing to them his real and profound gratitude for their generosity. And so what he describes, though, is like starting in verse 11, he says, I don't say this out of need. So I'm not trying to exacerbate my circumstances, rather because he says, I've learned to be content in whatever circumstances it is that I find myself. And then he says, I know how to make do with little, and I know how to make do with a lot. And then at the end of verse 12, he speaks of being well-fed and hungry. In short, what Paul is saying is that I have come to know and understand what it is like to experience life in the extremes. With material and physical stuff, Paul is saying, I know what it's like to have plenty. I know what it's like to have sufficient money in the bank and sufficient resources to buy whatever I need. I also understand and know what it's like to be destitute. I know what it's like to be just stuffed after a Thanksgiving meal, and I know what it's like to wonder where the next meal is going to come from. I have operated, and I know what it is like to experience materially and physically life in the extremes. And when we say that he knows what it's like to experience life in the physical extremes, he mentions specifically hunger, but I believe there is a principle here that expands and includes all the physical stuff that we experience. That Paul understood also what it was like to experience sickness and fatigue and exhaustion and having a bad diagnosis, and he also understood what it was like to be healthy and whole and feeling well. But as he is describing this, behind that description is an important principle, which is this. Just because you are, or just because I am a follower of Jesus, does not mean that I am precluded from the experience of physical or material struggle. Just because you have a Jesus jersey on, and just because you've got a Bible with your name on it, and just because you have a personal relationship with Christ, does not mean that you at all get a pass and that somehow you are able to live and experience life free from physical difficulty and adversity and need, or material difficulty, adversity, and need. You do not, I do not, we will not get a pass because of our connection with Jesus. It's a simple thought, but it's an essential thought. When I was in high school and then my first year in college, I took a year in high school and I took a semester in college of a subject that I can't tell you how much it has helped me. Day in and day out, I am so grateful that I spent a year and a half taking calculus. I'm telling you, the derivatives that I've been able to do and all the I can't tell you how grateful I am and how blessed to have spent all that time taking calculus. And it's amazing. Like, for example, I remember doing word problems in those classes where if you've got a 6-foot ladder that's leaning against a wall, I could tell you how fast it was going when it hit the ground. I mean, don't you need that? I mean, didn't you drop something the other day and say, I wonder how fast that was going when it hit the ground? You know, back then, I could tell you. I mean, it is so wonderful to have had all of that, all that experience and all that learning. It's been so, so beneficial. Now, I say that obviously in jest because I don't use it. However, I am grateful in particular for the experience of taking calculus in college. I took it as my first semester of my freshman year, and how it worked at Garden Webb at that point was this. If you had a math SAT score high enough and an incoming GPA significant enough, they would invite you to take calculus. Anybody could sign up for it, but if you were invited to take calculus and you got a C or better, they would give you credit not only for calculus, they'd give you credit for math 211, whatever that was. And so that meant by taking 3 hours, you got 6 hours worth of credit. Well, the core requirement said that you got to have 6 hours of math credit while you're there. And so it was like buy one, get one free. It was wonderful. It was wonderful. So I took this, and because of my experience in this, because I get a B in this, then I get credit for another class. I don't have to take another class. I don't have to sit under another series of mathematical lectures. I don't have to take anything else. I get credit for it because of my experience, because of what I have been through, because of my special status. I somehow get to avoid that. I get to opt out of it. Regularly in life, we experience circumstances and we achieve as people or as Americans particular statuses that give us the ability to, in effect, opt out of some things that otherwise would have to go through, that we may want to avoid. What I want you to understand is that there is no opting out of physical and material difficulty. You do not, by virtue of your connection with Jesus, even though it is real and sincere and absolutely changed your life, you do not, I do not, and will not get a pass from it. And especially when you think about what's going on with the pandemic, some of you, and there may be plenty in this room, that right now everything is fine. You've still got a job and you're working hard and it seems like business is good. But understand this, just because of your connection with Jesus does not mean that this week you don't hear that there are corporate downsizing decisions that have been made and you've lost your job even though you're a model employee. Just because you've got a connection with Jesus and just because you feel really good now does not mean that you might not go to the doctor this week, them come back with some test results and say, I'm sorry, but we found cancer. Just because you've got a personal connection with Jesus does not mean that somehow, because of choices that you had nothing to do, because of the loss of a job, even though you were a good and model employee, does not mean that you could not wonder sincerely, where's our next meal going to come from? And actually have to pass on the experience of a meal. Again, this is simple, but we've got to get this straight. We've got to know this in our mind. And it doesn't make any difference what the coffee mug says. This whole I can do all things through Christ does not mean that you can just do any and everything, that you got a blank check that God signed his name to, because even as a follower of Jesus, walking with him does not mean that you get a pass for material and physical struggle. But this passage also communicates another principle, which is this. Walking with Jesus can prevent you from focusing on the struggle. Walking with Jesus can prevent you from focusing on the struggle. In verses 11 and 12, there is a term that hopefully you note because it's used twice. He says in verse 11, he says, I'm not saying this out of need because I've learned to what? To be content. In verse 12, he says this, I have learned the secret of being content. So he uses this word twice. That ought to catch your attention. The problem is this. The Greek only uses the word once. In verse 11, there is the word that's used content, and it's used how we tend to use it, which is to say that I know what it's like. I've been through this experience. I know what it's like to be okay with. Like if you're content, you say, oh, I'm fine. It's kind of like when the waiter or waitress says, would you like some more to drink? And you say, no, I'm fine. You're essentially saying whatever's in your glass, you're content with that. Paul says in verse 11, I have experienced the extremes, having plenty, having nothing, being well-fed, being hungry, and I have been able to experience that and still be okay. Even in the face of need and even in the face of lack, I have come to be able to experience that and still be okay. But then he says in verse 12, where he says, I've learned the secret of being content. The word that's used there, that's translated, and there are reasons why it's translated as content, but they're not great ones. The word that's actually used is a term that, excuse me, well, anyway, he says, I have learned the secret of being content. That word literally means to be initiated. And it was a term that was most often used by like secretive religions to describe this concept of being initiated where there was understanding or enlightenment that you have that others don't. So if I could take those thoughts and put them together, Paul is communicating this reality. I've been able to go through the experiences of extreme in life. I know what it's like to experience physical need and material need. I know what it's like to have physical and material abundance. I know what it's like. I've been through that experience and have been able to get to be and achieve a point where I am okay because I've been initiated in this experience, and it has brought understanding that I did not have otherwise. In fact, he says, I have learned the secret of being content. He's conveying the idea that I have come to experience understanding that not everybody else seems to have, of how it is that I can be content, how it is that I can be okay in the face of material and physical struggle. And it seems that it has everything to do with focus. It seems to have everything to do with focus. That he can, whether it's everything or nothing, where it's having little or much or little, his ability to experience contentment, to be okay, seems to have everything to do with focus. Back in January, I had to go to the periodontist, and they were preparing for this procedure, and they needed to make it's a stent is what they called it, but it's like a plastic tray that's would look essentially like your upper dentures almost, that you would put in there because they were preparing to do this gum work. Anyway, so what they needed to do, and maybe you've had this before, is that they needed to make an impression. They need to make a mold. And so they take this metal tray and they put some sort of goop in it. I don't know what it is, but it's just kind of rubbery mess. And that they fill that in there, and then they put it in your mouth. And then the hygienist or the nurse, whatever she was, she said, I've got to hold this in here for a minute. Okay. All right, so she's doing that, and the more that she presses, the more it's squeezing out, and it's starting to go down my throat. And I am like my eyes are beginning to. I'm just gagging. Tears are pouring, not because, just my eyes are watering, and I'm just trying to keep it together, and I keep telling myself, do not throw up, do not throw up, do not throw up. But it's all I can, and she can, and I'm squirming. This is terrible. I'm white-knuckling it. It's just absolutely terrible. And so the other hygienist is in there, and she says this, wiggle your toes. Wiggle your toes. Think about your feet. Wiggle your toes. Move your feet. Wiggle your toes. Move your feet. And I'm telling you, I was kind of wanting to kick her with my wiggling toes and my feet. But I did what she said. And I was wiggling my toes and twisting my feet. Wiggling my toes, twisting my feet. Breathe out of your nose. Breathe out of your nose. Doing everything that she says. And I was able to get through it. Why? Because I quit focusing on the fact that I was choking on this mess that they've put in my mouth. Because I'm not focused on the fact that I am gagging by virtue of this impression being made. I'm focusing on something different. I said that Paul is saying that I have gotten to the point where, and I've been initiated, and it's like there is this understanding that I have been able to come to experience that others don't have, where I'm able to be okay in the face of real and meaningful need, whether material or physical, and it seems it has everything to do with focus. But for Paul, what was the focus? You see it in verse 13. He says that I'm able to do all things through him who strengthens me. Now, how he is able to experience contentment in the highs and lows is because of Christ who strengthens him. When he is the object of your focus, you gain strength, you gain the ability that you did not and would not otherwise have to be able to be sustained, to be even able to be okay in the face of physical or material difficulty. I want you to understand that Philippians 4:13 is not God giving you a blank check to say, whatever you want to do, whatever you could set your mind to, because you're a follower of Jesus, because you've got a fish bumper sticker on your car, because you've got a God is my co-pilot tag on the front of your vehicle. He's not saying that you can just do anything. Again, this has context, and he's talking specifically about material and physical struggle. And he says, I can experience this even to the point of contentment when my focus is on him, and he gives me the strength to endure this. In fact, even endure it to the point where I'm able to be content. If I could just put that in one statement for you, it's on the screen, and that's this. With Christ's strength, I can endure even to the point of contentment everything that's in His will for me to experience. If for you, as a follower of Jesus, whatever you experience, those circumstances, whatever God wills for you to experience, this is saying that God, if the focus is on Him, with His strength, you are able to go through those things. You are even able to endure those things to the point even of being okay. Not because of you, not because of some uncanny ability, rather because of His ability, because of His strength. Do you ever talk to yourself and try to give yourself a pep talk? That you're going through something that's difficult, you're trying to focus on something, you're trying to endure something, and you talk to yourself and you say, now Michael, you can do this. Michael, you can do this. You've got this. You can do this. My encouragement for you is not to do that. Because what does that do? That draws the focus on you. That you can do this, that on your own you've got the ability to accomplish whatever and to overcome whatever the adversity or the obstacle is. This is not encouraging you to do that. I believe there ought to be a separate conversation that we have with ourselves and to say, Lord, I'm going through this. You can do this. You can make this possible. You can do it. You can do it. And I am leaning on you. And I promise you, as you do that, you can endure even to the point of contentment everything that is His will for you to experience. Listen, I don't know what's around the corner for myself. I don't know what this week is going to look like for myself. To say nothing about what the experience is going to be for you and what adversity may just be around the corner. What I can tell you is this. When you decide and when you take seriously making the Lord your focus and say, Lord, I need you. I'm at the end of me. Michael can't do this, but you can. And my focus is on you as I go through this. As you do that, what you will experience is strength to endure, even to the point of contentment. Why? Because Paul also says that His strength is made perfect, not in my strength, but in my weakness. I can do all things through Him who gives me strength. This isn't a blank check. It's talking about physical and material struggle. And he's saying that for you as a follower of Jesus, you're able to go through those things. And that walking with Jesus, you don't get a pass on it, but when you're walking through it with Jesus, your focus doesn't have to be on those, provided that your focus is on Him. So my question is this. Strength is available. Strength will be provided. The question is, will you use it? You bow your heads with me. It's entirely possible that you are here today, or maybe you're watching online, wherever or whenever it is that you're watching, and it's a physical struggle you're going through. It's a material struggle that you're facing. Maybe you would have loved for me to say and read a verse to say, there's going to somehow miraculously be a lot of money. That the cancer is just going to absolutely go away. That the job is not going to disappear. I'm not telling you that. God's Word's not telling you that. You don't get a pass. I don't get a pass. There's no opting out. The good news is we can go through these things. We can endure these things even to the point of contentment when we make a choice as to what we focus on. Either my focus is going to be on the mountain stretched out before me, the weight of the feelings of need, or my focus can be on Him and His ability to get me through whatever He wills for me to experience. I get it. That's easier said than done. But as you're going through it today, or maybe you're getting ready to go through it, would you, right where you are, say, Lord, I want that to be my experience. I'm not itching for bad stuff or difficult stuff to come my way, but I do. I want to experience those difficulties in ways where my focus is on you, that I can endure them even to the point of contentment, not because of me, but because of you. Listen, that's a prayer I promise that God is looking for and would be delighted to hear you say. Those are attitudes that He would bless. But all this is contingent on having a relationship with Him. These are promises for those that have a relationship with the Lord. The question is, do you have that? Can you say with certainty that you've got a personal relationship with the God who made you? Listen, if you can't say that or you are unsure, if you're online, will you call us? Will you email us? If you are here today, will you talk to me? Will you talk to Jamie afterwards? I'm telling you, it is possible to have a relationship with God that can change your life and change your eternity in such a way that you can be destitute, that you can be hungry, you can experience the greatest of material and physical needs and somehow be able to be okay because you can have a relationship with Him that changes your focus, and you can endure even to the point of contentment if you've got a relationship with Him. Lord, we want to say thank you for giving us not just this verse, but this passage, because this passage gives context to that verse, and it communicates truths that will prepare us for what lies ahead and help make sure that our focus is where it needs to be. Lord, for those that may not yet have a relationship with you, I pray that you might use or have used this time today to begin the process of drawing them to you, that they might make the decision to become one of your followers. Lord, for those of us who've already crossed the line, that are part of the family, that we're on your team, I pray, Lord, that we don't use this verse to deceive ourselves, to say we can do just anything, because we can't. We can't. We are so limited. At the end of the day, we are so effectively powerless. But we can experience and walk through profound seasons of difficulty and adversity, both materially and physically. We can endure it with contentment when our focus is on you. I pray that we make the decisions that make that possible. We say this to you in Jesus' name. Amen. Listen, God bless you. Thank you for being here today. Those of you that are watching online, I thank you for spending part of your day, whenever it is, with us. If you're a guest, let me just say thank you for being with us. And if you're online as a guest, if you'd like more information about us and who it is that we are as a church, we'd love to share that with you. Next week is when we're going to be starting the next Discovery class, and some of you have already signed up for that. We're going to be touching base with you, giving some details about where exactly we're going to be meeting. If you would like to participate in that and have not yet done so, please reach out to us as soon as you can. Find me after the service or call us in the church office, and we'll get that information to you. As Charlie shared earlier about the ministry of the Gideons, this is not just a one and done where you heard about this today. Throughout the month of October, we are encouraging you to prayerfully give in support of this ministry. What you can do is you can give directly to the Gideons. You can use that envelope that's in the pamphlet that you received. You can mail that. If you do that, that needs to be made payable to the Gideons. If you want to give through the church, you can do that. Make your check payable to Gate City Baptist Church. Just label it, both on the envelope and the check. Label it for Gideons, and your gift will get there. Throughout the month of October, you've got this opportunity to give. So if you're not ready yet to do so today, just know that we're doing this throughout the month. If you want to give your gift in person, there are offering plates at each of the three main exits to the sanctuary, or you can mail your gift to us at your convenience. And so we thank you in advance for your support of this ministry that honestly, for time and eternity, has changed who knows how many lives. Deacons, remember, we'll be meeting today at 4 o'clock. And bell ringers, again, thank you so much today for leading us in worship. Thank you for being here today. We're going to start with sections 2 and 4. 2 and 4. You can be dismissed. And if you're in 1 and 3, if you'll give them some chance to clear the aisles, and then you can be dismissed.